I'm going to pass in is I'm going to pass in dataset1, okay, as the first column, and I'm going to pass in dataset2, okay, as the second column, okay, and that should create a data frame for me. So I'm going to hit return on that, and that should have created my data frame. Okay, that's where referencing it. My data frame references this particular data frame that we just created. So let me actually just call my data frame. So I'm going to call my data frame, and let's see what we get. Let's keep in mind that when we called dataset1 earlier, it was printed in row format, and when we called dataset2, it was printed in row format. So let's see what the output looks like now from my data frame. So what I'm going to get is, oh, well, there you go. We're getting a table. This first column here is just an index that represents the row number with respect to the table. You can see that dataset1 values are all listed down the first column. Let's call this the first column. And dataset2 values are listed down the second column. And what we can see that in with dataset1, the first value in the structure, which was a 7, okay, there's the 7 here, okay, the 7 is associated with a 3, which was the first value in the second structure that we created up here, okay. So actually the important thing here about creating data frames is that when we combine vectors together, okay, the vectors must be the same length for us to actually combine them in together to be data frames, okay. So that's important. So we're creating a table that has a number of columns, okay. Each column is basically a vector, okay, but the most important thing is that the number of observations or the number of values in each column must be the same, okay. That's an important characteristic for us, okay. If I want to now I have the data frame, let's say data frame, okay, that's what we call it. What did I say? I called it data. Let me just, I forget what I actually just called it, and I'm about to clear my screen. Let me just call ls. ls lists the variables that we've created at this particular stage, so I'm going to call ls. Actually, the name of it is my data frame. That's what I want to actually have a look at. So I'm going to say my data frame, okay? But what I'd like to print out is I'd like to print out one of the columns of data that's associated with my data frame, okay? And we can do that by using the dollar call, okay? Or let's say this is an invocation, yeah, of a particular column which has a name within this particular data frame. So I'm going to say my data frame dataset1, okay? So actually what we should get is we should get the values that are stored inside dataset1, and that's what we get, 7, 3, 9, 10, and 11. I could call my data frame dataset2, and we get the values that are stored inside the second column, okay? That's important. So now we know how to create a data frame. We create vectors, okay? We combine the vectors together by using the data.frame function. That creates a data frame object for us, okay? And we know how to access the columns within the data frame. We use the dollar function, we use the dollar symbol, okay? After the name of the data frame, after the variable, okay? Followed by the name of the column, okay? Now, let's say I'm not happy with these names of these columns, okay? Let's just actually have a look at this again. Okay, so let's say my data frame. When I print out my data frame, you can see the first column is called dataset1 and the second column is called dataset2. Let's say that the first column actually represents maths, the number of times you attended a maths tutorial, and the second column represents the number of times you've attended an English class tutorial, yeah? The first row represents for person 1, they attended 7 maths tutorials and 3 English tutorials. The second row represents that that person attended 3 maths tutorials and 5 English tutorials. Yeah. Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to change the names of these particular vectors, of these particular columns within the data frame. And we can do that. Okay? So what I'm going to say is I'm going to call the function names. So names, okay? Names takes in a data frame. So I'm going to pass in my data frame. Okay, so it takes in the data frame. So what this is actually saying to us here is this, is that I'd like to update the names, and in this case the column names associated with my data frame. Actually what I'd like to pass in there is I want to pass in a vector, because actually these two values are basically a vector of values. We have the first value here and we have the second value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the combine function, okay, C, and I'm going to call the first value maths tutorials, okay? And I'm going to call the second value, okay, I'm going to call the second value English. Oh, let's use an uppercase E. English tutorials, okay? Oh, let's use a uppercase T, tutorials, okay? And what this call here is going to do is it should update the column names. It should change dataset1 to be maths tutorial, and it should change dataset2 to be English tutorials. Okay? So I'm going to hit return, and now I'm going to call my data frame again, okay? And you can actually see what's happening. It's had to update the names of the columns. Okay, so we have a data frame. We know how to access each individual column. We access it by using the dollar symbol followed by the name of the column. So in this case here now, if I actually want to access the first column out of this particular data frame, which is called my data frame, if I want to access the first column, it's my data frame followed by the dollar symbol. And now you can see that we actually have access to the names of the columns, the updated names of the columns. So if I want to access the maths tutorial values, I go my data frame $maths tutorials, and we get the values out that we had earlier on for data set 1. If I want to access, let's say, the English tutorials, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll say $English tutorials, and that gives us the values for the English tutorials. What are other things that we could do? Well, we could access specific rows in our table, okay? So if I want to access a specific row in the table, let's say I want to access row, let's just print my data frame again to the screen so that we actually see what it looks like. If I want to access, let's say, the values on row 1, well, I will say my data frame, and this time I'm going to use